Bomba What are we saying? What are we saying? Good afternoon and good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and a happy Bomba to all who are currently listening. Oh, this bottle of Avian smells of piss. Oh my gosh, this bottle of Avian smells of piss. It smells like someone's pissed in it or something. Maybe Dean White snuck into the house while I wasn't here. Hello, Popcorn Boxing. I hope you are well. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Chris Eubank Sr., to be honest. I think Chris Eubank Sr. is at that age, isn't he? Chris Eubank Sr. is at that age where he stopped using the toilet, innit? Without assistance. So if there's nobody around and he's by himself, then it'll have to be a bottle. Yeah. Can you believe that this fight is on? Do you know who this has come from? This has come from Chris McKenna. Like, a lot of people, by the way, are crediting Gareth A. Davis as the source of this story. Now, the source of this story is Chris McKenna. Chris McKenna wrote this story about a week or two ago about Ben and Eubank being in talks and being very close to being done. This is Chris McKenna's tweet from today saying the fight's really close, but McKenna first broke this like a week or so ago. So I believe it's his story. Shout out to Chris McKenna, probably one of the most reliable journalists in the UK right now. I've got a lot of respect for Chris McKenna. His story. And now Gareth A. Davis has now jumped on top of it and he's saying, my sources are telling me that this fight is really close. I don't know what to think about this fight, you know. Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank. I literally do not know what to think about this fight. So I'm going to give you a couple of different opinions, which are going to be contradictory and clashing. I'm just going to think out aloud for this fight, if it really happens. Let me tell you something right now. Actually, let's just do a quick poll. Not sure if anybody's here, but let's just do a quick poll. Okay. Will Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. really happen? Do you really believe that this fight is on? Listen, let me tell you, if it was anybody other than McKenna, I would take this with a pinch of salt. You know what I mean? I would take this with a pinch of Himalayan salt. There you go. There's the poll. If you look at the chat right now, pinned to the top of the chat is a poll. Will Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. really happen? We've got 34 in the chat. If you would like to be part of the chat, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. Please feel free to hit the like button. And if you don't hit the like button, we will be sending Dougie Joyce after you.
What was going to happen? I was dead. You're dead.
There you go. That's what will be happening. So, yeah, if you want to be part of the chat, if you want to have your opinion, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and have your opinion. I'll keep an eye on this poll. What do you guys think? You guys think, Jesus Christ, we haven't got many people here, but straight away, 17 votes straight away. 65% of you are saying you think this fight's really going to happen. Jesus. And let me tell you, if it was anybody other than Chris McKenna, yeah, I would say, nah, you're talking rubbish. Who says that? Dillian White. Jeez, it's been a long time since we heard from him, innit? If it was anybody other than Chris McKenna, I would say you're talking rubbish. But yeah, it is what it is. We'll have to wait and see. There's a oh, Jesus Christ. Did you have to call yourself that, Richard? We'll have to wait and see. There's Gareth A. Davis on TalkSport with Adam Catterall, pretending it's his sources, when really he heard it from Chris McKenna. I'll continue to read that poll in a second. So let me give you my thoughts. There are going to be some contradictory thoughts. I'm just going to think about out loud. First and foremost, my very, very first thought when I heard that this fight was close was, do you know what? I'm going to give some credit to Eddie Hearn, you know, and I'm going to give some credit to Conor Benn. Now, this is part of the reason why we never, ever on this show call fighters cowards, right? You guys know, we never call fighters cowards, pussies, duckers. We don't do any of that, because if we did that, we wouldn't be able to go into boxing gyms surrounded by professional fighters and then sneak onto a YouTube channel and hide behind a keyboard and call them cowards. That's why I never do that, right? That's why I never, ever do that, right? So I've always said, look, most of the time it's the promoters, it's the networks, it's politics. You know, these fighters are, at the end of the day, for the most part, are fighting men. And in most cases, they would fight anybody. And I'm very glad that I never, ever called Conor Benn a coward or a ducker or anything like that. I'm very, very critical of him. We'll get on to why I'm critical of him. And I'm critical of Conor Benn from a technical standpoint. You know, I haven't even been that critical of Conor Benn's hair and beard transplant, to be fair. You know, did it? No? I haven't even been that critical of Conor Benn's hair and beard transplant. So I ain't trying to make it personal with Conor Benn. I know somebody who I boxed with at one of my gyms who's seen him up close and personal in the Matchroom gym down in Essex, and says he's an absolute beast. That's what he told me. He said, I've seen this guy spar. Let's just put it this way. He couldn't tell me names, but he said, I've seen this guy spar. This guy was taking people out in sparring. He was taking people out left, right, and centre. And he's legit. That's what he was saying to me, this guy is absolutely legit. Like, you've got to see it up close to believe it. That's what I can believe it. And I can believe he's very fit, very, very strong, etc., etc. Right? So first and foremost, look, glad I've never called Conor Benn a coward, because listen, for me, this is a tougher fight than the Avanesian fight. Would you agree with that? Press 1 of you would agree, and press 2 of you would disagree. For me, Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. is a tougher fight than Conor Benn versus David Avanesian. So like I said before, I've never had a problem with Conor Benn on a personal level. I idolised his father growing up. I idolised Nigel Benn growing up. You remember Daryl came on the last show, and Daryl said to me, Ultra, growing up, who are the British fighters that you really sort of like couldn't wait to watch? Who are the British fighters that you got excited about watching? You know, people are telling me British boxing is booming. We've gone from fucking Nigel Benn and David Haye to fucking Ramla Ali and Johnny Fisher. But that's a different story for a different day. But Nigel Benn's one of the very few fighters I actually got excited about watching. I thought he was electric to watch. So Conor Benn ain't no fucking coward. And anybody calling Conor Benn or anybody calling a professional fighter a coward when they haven't been in the ring and put gloves on or taken a shot needs to sort of, you know, fucking spin their head around. That's the first thing. So I'll say big credit to Conor Benn. Even if this fight doesn't come off, the fact that he's even contemplating taking it, yeah, he deserves credit for that. Eddie Hearn, in my opinion, listen, Eddie Hearn deserves credit for making the fight. It's a good fight. It's a tough fight for Conor Benn. It's not a gimme fight. For me, it's a fight that I'd rather watch than Conor Benn versus Jose Ramirez. That's just my opinion. Let me tell you, would you agree with me on that? What would you rather see? Conor Benn versus Jose Ramirez. If you'd rather see Conor Benn versus Jose Ramirez, press 10. If you'd rather see Conor Benn versus Jose Ramirez, I'd rather see this fight. I think it's a very good fight. I'll give credit to Eddie Hearn for making that fight, if this fight comes off, all right? So I will give credit. And that was the first thought I had. Then I started thinking a little bit more about it, and I thought, well, hold on a minute. Here's the strange part of it. We still ain't really seen Conor Benn get in the ring with top welterweights. I mean, Eddie Hearn's on camera, and I watched that fucking DAZN broadcast with Ade. I can't find the video, but I'm pretty sure that he said that Conor Benn was an elite welterweight after his performance against Chris Van der Heerden when Ade interviewed him post-fight. Let me know if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure he said the words elite, but he thinks that Conor Benn is a world-level welterweight. But for some reason, we can't seem to get Conor Benn in a fight with somebody his own size. If you think I've got a little bit of a point in there, press 1. If you think I've got you think I'm wrong on that, press 2. But you know what I mean? We still can't seem to actually get Conor Benn in with a good fighter at his own weight class. He's either fighting guys that, you know, are a bit old, a bit washed up, or he's fighting guys that are a bit smaller than him, and now he's fighting someone who's fucking 2 weight classes above him. Do you know what I mean? That's one of the thoughts that came into my head here. And like, if you're Eddie Hearn and you're saying this guy is a world class welterweight, look at this. Look at this quote here. he fights in the same style as Mike Tyson. He's getting better and better. I think, who is that guy who writes for Ring Magazine who said that Conor Benn reminded him of Mike Tyson in the 90s? I think it was Dougie Fisher. People criticize me on this channel for saying, right, the reason why, not the only reason, right? There are a couple of reasons why this channel doesn't have 10, 20, 30, 40,000 subscribers, right? And some of them are my fault, yeah, but two of the big reasons why we don't have those, which is fine by me, right? Because I don't get paid for this, right? Is one, we don't blow smoke up Anthony Joshua's ring piece, right? And two, because I think I'm pretty much the only channel out there who just says, look, if you haven't fucking been in a boxing ring and taken a shot, then you really shouldn't be fucking, you know, writing pound for pound lists for Ring Magazine. Do you know what I mean? That's my, you know, you shouldn't be writing pound for pound lists for Ring Magazine if you haven't been in a boxing ring and taken a punch, because you don't know what you're talking about, innit? It's like me fucking ranking surgeons, innit? I've said it before. It's like me ranking surgeons when I've never passed medical school. It's stupid, right? I get a lot of heat for saying that, but let me quickly say this. If you see some of the chat coming out right now about how Derek Chisora is the favourite to beat Deontay Wilder. By the way, just quickly say, if you've seen that talk on Twitter, Derek Chisora is the favourite to beat Deontay Wilder. I said it before. That's the reason why I don't really talk to people in depth about boxing who haven't put gloves on. For that reason, because really they don't know what they're talking about. Get in a ring, go have a spar, take a shot first, and then come back. Anyway, Conor Benn, yeah? Conor Benn, yeah? If you're an elite level welterweight or a world-class welterweight, what's wrong with putting them in the ring with a world-class... Like, David Avanesian, yeah? Isn't even elite. He's like fringe world level, isn't he? Am I right in saying that? David Avanesian. Like, he beat an old Shane Mosley for WBA regular many moons ago, right? But I don't think... I've never seen anything to suggest that David Avanesian's in the same league as fucking a Virgil Ortiz or a John Jarron Ennis or Errol Spence or even like a fucking Yordanis Ugas or anybody like that. I've never seen that from David Avanesian. So, yeah, that's all I'm saying, really. I mean, it's a good fight for the fans. But I'm just... Somebody's nagging away at me saying, if this fight really is close to being happening, right? If this fight really is on the verge of being announced, why now? Like, Eddie Hearn saying the guy's an elite level welterweight. Well, put him in a ring with a fucking elite level welterweight. Or you're saying he's a world-class welterweight. Put him in a ring with a world-class welterweight. Do you know what I mean? What do you guys think? Get your comments and I'll read them out. Why are you so sort of reluctant to match this guy with somebody his own size? Now there's a chance he could be getting in a ring with somebody who's 2 weight classes bigger. Do you know, somebody said something really interesting? And again, we'll have to wait and see if this fight really, really happens or is it just smoke, right? But you know what someone said? Someone said, this reminds me of when Eddie Hearn threw Kell Brook in with Golovkin. That's what somebody said. Somebody said, this reminds me of that time when Eddie Hearn put Kell Brook in the ring with Golovkin. When Kell Brook was world class. There was no like doubts about that, in my opinion. After the Porter fight, there was no doubts like about what Kell Brook was. It's not like Conor Benn, right? I mean, there was no doubt. Kell Brook did it the hard way. Went away from home, fought Sean Porter, beat Sean Porter, right? But he couldn't get Kell Brook a big fight, could he, Eddie? Remember that at the time? Tried to make the Jesse Vargas fight. This was before the days of DAZN, right? Tried to make the Jesse Vargas fight and he couldn't make that fight, could he? He couldn't get Kell Brook a big fight. And at the time, we was all screaming, weren't we, for Kell Brook to go and sign for Al Heyman. But in the end, he showed his loyalty to Eddie Hearn and he got shoved in a ring with Gennady Golovkin. Now, Chris Eubank Jr. ain't no fucking Gennady Golovkin, right? Let's get that straight. Chris Eubank Jr. ain't no Gennady Golovkin. And we'll talk about the technical aspect of boxing in a second, that's fine. Chris Eubank Jr. ain't no Gennady Golovkin, but I'm just thinking like, why now? Why now? Conor Benn's knocking at the door of something very, very serious at welterweight. Why now? Why would now be the time to make him go fucking 2 weight classes? Effectively go a weight class and a half above and risk it. Do you guys think that, and I'm just purely guessing, I'm not Don't attack me. I'm just telling you the stuff that comes into my mind. Okay? I'm just telling you the stuff that comes into my mind, yeah? It made me wonder. I hope the zone's all right, you know. I hope the zone's all right because, you know, they just lost Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk too, right? So they need big fights to attract subscribers. That's exactly what I was thinking, Mark. It's just such a... The timing of it is just weird, isn't it? I could be completely wrong, but do you guys not think the timing of this fight, if it happens, is just so weird? Eubank. So apparently, according to Gareth A. Davis, Eubank would be fighting on DAZN. So I'd imagine Hearn would have an option on Eubank. And then there's rumours that Eubank might go and fight Billy Joe Saunders afterwards. So that's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. What do you guys think it is? I'm just thinking, why now? Conor Benn will fight anyone. I've never, ever come on this channel and said anything personal about Conor Benn, his family, his mum, his little girl. I'm not one of them people. If people who listen to this channel should know that by now. What I do is I try to point out some inconsistencies and I try to make some jokes and make people laugh. That's it. But if you look at this, listen to this show, I don't think you've ever heard me make it personal about even Eddie Hearn. I've never said it. How much stuff we could say about Eddie Hearn behind the scenes. Fuck me. Jesus, about it. Jesus. Do you know how much we could say about Eddie Hearn's misses, what he gets up to in his spit? If we wanted to make personal comments about Eddie Hearn, we could make them till the cows come home. Mainly, we keep it boxing. We don't, I defended Barry Hearn against those accusations, which I think are incorrect. So I don't make it personal about fighters. To me, it's about boxing. Conor Benn will fight anyone. These are fighting men, but if I was in Conor Benn's team, yeah, potentially a shitload of money to be made in this fight. Great nostalgia fight. Fill a stadium, could make a lot of money. Could help make Conor Benn, or could help get Conor Benn on the way to being a household name in this country. I can definitely see the upside of taking a fight for Conor Benn. And I think Conor Benn's capable of actually doing something in this fight. We'll talk about it in a minute. But it's just, I don't know what you guys think about that. Why now? Why now? Because it's a bit of a risk, isn't it? And we'll talk about why in a minute. Buju B says, why he not fight Jenkins, Congo, Kelly, or Avanesian? 1-2 Pivot says, fight makes no sense. Eubank fought at 168 in the World Boxing Super Series. Makes no sense for Ben to take this fight. Let me go check the poll quickly. The poll's closing in. We've got 81 people in the chat. We've only got 27 likes. Please feel free to hit the like button if you'd like to. If you'd like to join the chat, please feel free to subscribe and give us your view. 54% of you so far think that Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. is going to happen next. I'm not sure about that. But it's bizarre, isn't it? G Poker says, you reckon Hearn can't get him a big fight? Well, the Keith Thurman stuff, in my opinion, I'll have to see that to believe that. Does anybody really think Keith Thurman's going to travel on a fucking plane? You guys think Keith Thurman's going to jump on a British Airways and go and fight Conor Benn in what, O2 Arena? For what? Why would he do that for? Why would the PBC ever do that? I could be wrong, but last time I checked, it's like it was almost war between Eddie Hearn and the PBC, right? Because remember when he turned up in America and he started saying he was going to put people out of business? Do you remember that? 4 years ago, Eddie Hearn turned up in America and said he was going to put his competition out of business. 4 years later, they're all still there. Remember that? Turned up in America, said he was going to put everybody out of business, or said he was going to put certain people out of business. And Frank Smith was talking about everybody else running out of money. That's what Frank Smith said. He said they're all going to run out of money. That's what Frank Smith said. Well, 4 years later, 4 years later, it is what it is, isn't it? So I don't know. I'm not sure if they'd be willing to let Keith Thurman go over to the O2 and fight Conor Benn in front of UK judges. I could be wrong on that. So who is it really going to? Who else could it be? I don't know. Do you guys think this is dangerous matchmaking? Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. If you think this is dangerous matchmaking, press 1. If you don't think this is dangerous matchmaking, press 2. Don't be influenced by me. Just give your opinion. Because let me tell you something. I done fucking laid into my boss, Frank Warren, a couple of weeks ago for Anthony Yarde, yeah, a.k.a. the Blue Do-Rag Man versus fucking Beterbiev. That is 100% dangerous matchmaking. Straight up. Like Yarde versus Beterbiev. That's disgusting. Yarde shouldn't be in this. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Anthony Yarde shouldn't be in the same city as fucking Beterbiev, let alone the same fucking ring. Simple as that. And I love Anthony Yarde. I love Tunde, and I'll be fucking screaming for them to get it done. But Anthony Yarde shouldn't be anywhere near Beterbiev in the ring. That for me is the worst mismatch of the year involving a British fighter. That to me is shocking. That is shocking. I would never put Ben and Eubank anywhere near that, right? But do you think it's a bad mismatch? Considering, as somebody brought up, Chris Eubank has a history of fighting at fucking 168 pounds. This is a guy who's done 12 with George Groves, you know. George Groves was supposed to be a heavy puncher. I've met George Groves very briefly. I've never taken a punch off George Groves, so I don't know how hard he punches. But I'm reliably informed he punches very hard. Very hard. Chris Eubank did the 12 with Groves. And he was wobbled, wasn't he, Eubank? He was hurt and wobbled, but stayed on his feet, didn't he, for the full 12, didn't he? Stayed on his feet. So Eubank stayed on his feet against hard-hitting 168 pounders. Carl Froch struggled to stay on his feet against Groves. Carl Froch struggled to stay on his feet against Groves. But all of a sudden, yeah, they're seriously discussing allowing Ben. And Ben's not even a big welterweight, is he? Is Conor Benn really a big welterweight? I don't know. He's got a lot bigger, hasn't he, in the last couple of years, though, isn't he? If you look at, I've got to be careful what I say here, but he has had one hell of a physical transformation. If you look at Conor Benn around about the time he was, remember Conor Benn when he was on Next Gen cards and he was going life and death with Payonad, that kickboxer, French kickboxer, Cedric Payonad. If you look at his physique now compared to what he was, he has gone through some transformation. Despite that, do you really think Conor Benn's a big welterweight? It's never really given me the impression he's a big welterweight. These guys like fucking Errol Spence are massive. They are big guys, man. These are dudes that are walking around 170, 175, as far as I'm aware. Let me know if I'm right about that. Guys like Spence, innit? They're walking around like fucking 170 and stuff. Kell Brook is another one. Kell Brook walks around 170 all day long, Kell Brook. He walks around 170 pounds all day long and kills himself to get down to 100, 147. So Ben ain't even the biggest welterweight. And now you want to send him up to what? You want to send him up to, what's his catch weight? 155 pounds. 155 pounds. Let's talk about the actual fight itself, right? So let me just, before we talk about the fight itself, my opinion on it is, it's lots of different thoughts, really. Credit to Conor Benn. He's a warrior. He'll fight anybody. Conor Benn's a warrior anyway. The man had his jaw broken by Payonad and he never jacked it in. Sorry. I've always had a lot of respect for Conor Benn. And you know what the funny thing about Conor Benn is? I followed Conor Benn on social media when nobody even knew who he was. When he was in Australia, I was following Conor Benn and seeing what he was up to. When he was in Australia, nobody, way before these, you know what's, innit? Start jumping on his balls, innit? you know how these fight fans work. I was following Conor Benn on social media before when he was like having fucking small-time amateur fights out in Australia. So Conor Benn's a warrior. The fight itself, I'll tell you one thing that saves Conor Benn in this fight, right? The one thing that saves Conor Benn in this fight is that Chris Eubanks a big man, but he don't really fight like a big man. He's not going to fight like a big man. Big man, if you're Chris Eubank Jr., should be getting behind that jab. Chris Eubank Jr. don't pump out the jab. Fucking Liam Williams was beating Chris Eubank to the jab in their fight. Liam Williams was beating Chris Eubank Jr. to the jab in their fight. Liam Williams was beating Chris Eubank Jr. to the jab in their fight. So Chris Eubank Jr. isn't much of a jabber. That's going to be Conor Benn's downfall, right? Conor Benn's downfall is going to be when he gets in with somebody who's taller or rangier and knows how to put the jab on him. Then he's going to struggle. Because at the minute, right, both of these two fighters, in my opinion, I have doubts about their fundamentals. I have doubts about their fundamentals. So what do I mean by that? Yeah? Conor Benn setting up shots. I think there's a big, big problem with Conor Benn setting up shots. Constantly falling over himself, constantly tripping up, constantly loading up on shots, right? And missing shots wildly, right? Why is that? Doesn't set up a lot behind the jab, does it? It's one of the reasons why you set up behind that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of this, all this crap. Like, you ever heard this fucking bullshit? Oh, a good right hand will take you around the block, but a good jab will take you around the world. You know, all this bollocks from people who never even put gloves on. They just, you know, these fucking old wives' tales, innit? They come up with. Oh, a good right hand will take you around the block, but a good jab will take you around the world. Have you ever put gloves on? Well, no. Oh, shut the fuck up then. Right? But there's a reason why people say that, right? You jab, 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 touch the jab. It allows you to gauge distance. You're touching someone with a jab, bring your feet behind the jab, and you load shots up and set shots off your jab. Conor Benn doesn't have much of a jab, does he? And that's why when he throws his shots, he throws them from too far out of range. And he loads up from too far out of range, see? Because he's loading up on a big single left hook, or he's loading up on a big overhand right. It's not coming behind the jab. So Conor Benn ain't much of a jabber, right? But nor's Eubank. Nor's Eubank. And I just think this is the battle of who's got the worst fundamentals. Both of them haven't got good footwork, in my opinion. They're not great lateral movers, especially Conor Benn. Would you agree with me on that? Press 7 if you'd agree with me on that. They're not great lateral movers. They're not great at fucking... They're not going to keep... But both of them, these aren't guys that are going to keep fighters. These aren't guys that are going to... See, Conor Benn, right? You get in the ring with the big guy, right? The bigger man, yeah? You get in the ring with the bigger man who's got the supposed advantage in punch power, which is what Chris Eubank Jr. would have in this fight, yeah? And one of the most important things, or a couple of the most important things you do to shake off pressure fighters like Eubank, right? Is feinting, jabbing, and lateral movement. None of which, like, Ben doesn't have any of those three. With all due respect, like, I know I'm going to get heat for saying that, but listen, if you look at, go on YouTube and you look at how to deal with pressure fighters, solid jab is one way. Feinting, because feinting buys yourself time. See, when a guy's trying to come onto you and pressure you, yeah? If you can get him to buy your feints, you can get him to hold his feet, and then you can just move off, move away. So when he's walking you down, if you can get him to respect your feints, pressure fighter off you, or you can buy yourself time against the pressure fighter without even punching, which is important. Because you're not punching with the puncher. You're not punching with the pressure fighter. Does that make sense? If what I'm saying just made sense there, press 1 there. If what I'm saying made sense. Yeah? That's a key thing against pressure fighters. Can you get them to buy feints? They come onto you, feint, move off. Throw a shot, feint, mix it up. And if you can get them to respect your feints and they start holding their feet, you can buy yourself time without punching. When you're punching with a pressure fighter, you're often punching with a puncher. And when you're punching with a pressure fighter, you get dragged into wars, innit? And that's what the pressure fighter wants, innit? Now, has Conor Benn shown you in any of his fights that he knows how to, that he's very, very good at feinting and disguising his shots? No, he doesn't. He loads up on his shots for a mile away. That's why, who's that guy who got in the ring with him who was half cooked? The guy who Broner fought, Granados. You see how Granados went the distance with Conor Benn? Every time Conor Benn had Granados against the ropes, load up on the overhand right, load up on the left hook. No setup. No setups. And Granados saw those punches coming all the way from Ben. Adrian Granados saw Conor Benn's punches coming from the GT3. He had all the time in the world to go and wrap them up. and go get a cut price packet of Marlboro Lights with it as well. You could literally see Conor Benn's punches coming from the duty free. That's how he was able to go the distance, right? So if you look at the tools that are needed to keep off a bigger man who may try and pressure you in a fight, does Conor Benn have that? He hasn't shown that in any of his fights. What he showed me is that all he's going to try and do is punch himself out of trouble. That's what Conor Benn. Now maybe Conor Benn will show a different dimension. I could be wrong, but all Conor Benn showed me so far in his previous fights is that when somebody puts pressure on him, he'll try to punch his way out of trouble rather than box his way out of trouble. So that's going to be interesting. And this is the reason why when we look at these Conor Benn fights against the likes of Van der Heerden and who did he fight? Chef Algieri. Let me get up on the screen. Who's the other bloke he fought? This guy, Eddie Hearn putting this guy, went from putting this guy in with part-time chefs. He putting this guy in from part-time chefs to potentially putting them in with somebody who fought 168 at a high level. Shit. That's a hell of a jump, isn't it? That's a hell of a jump. You're going from Chef Algieri to 168 pounders. Well, what's the logic behind that? Well, the logic behind that is 20 years ago, his dad fought my dad. Do you know what I mean? Weird, isn't it? What's the logic of that? Conor Benn's not even a big welterweight. He hasn't even fought a true world-class level welterweight yet. Why would you shove him in a ring with somebody who's been in with world level opponents and world champions at 168? Well, because 25 years ago, his dad fought his dad. And lots of people watched it. So, well, fuck it. We'll do it again. Oh, fuck me. It's bizarre, isn't it? Now we'll get on to Eubank. So we've got on to Conor Benn. Conor Benn, in my opinion, hasn't shown in his fights that he has enough boxing ability or enough tricks to hold up a pressure fighter. But then you look at fucking Eubank. Eubank hasn't really shown in any of his fights that he can really, really be the big man. Eubank needs to keep Conor Benn at the end of a jab. If he does that, he'll win the fight. But Chris Eubank Jr. ain't never shown he's much of a jabber. Chris Eubank Jr. has shown he's a guy who likes to walk into the pocket and throw combinations up close and in the pocket. This is a guy who was getting beaten to the jab by Marcus Morrison. Yo, who's that guy? Yeah. Wank Awitajan was outboxing Eubank. He was. Do you remember that guy? Let me get his name. Wank Awitajan. He was beating Eubank to the fucking jab. Do you remember that? Remember they pulled that young boy out of a German leisure centre and shoved him in with Eubank, execution style, on like about 2 days' notice. And he fucking boxed. He's boxing Eubank. He was countering Eubank, wasn't he? Get this up. Was it him? Who is it? I'm going to have to get Eubank's box wick up. Do you remember that one? Let me get Eubank's box wick up. They put him in with that kid, innit? And that kid was fucking beating him to the jab and counter-punching him as well. So Chris Eubank's another one. All he's shown during his career is that, and you know what I say, one thing that I'll say about Eubank as well. People say Eubank's very fit. Yeah, he's very fit. But you know what thing I say about Conor Benn? Who do you think's got a better work rate? Might be Conor Benn, you know, because Conor Benn don't take no big breaks in fights. You see how Eubank does it? Walks into the pocket against overmatched opposition, lands a couple of combinations, and the next minute he's skirting around the ring, looking into the camera like his dad, innit? You know how much time Chris Eubank Jr. takes off during rounds? Chris Eubank Jr. out here taking timeshares in the boxing ring, didn't he? He's out taking timeshares in the boxing ring, isn't it? Chris Eubank. He never quite finishes the job, does he, Chris Eubank Jr.? His missus must be fuming every time they fucking have sex. He never quite finishes the job, does he, Eubank Jr.? Never finishes the job. Lands a combination. Next minute he's on the outside fucking around, having a breather, looking into the camera, talking to people in the fucking crowd, showboating, isn't it? He constantly taking breathers. This is what I'm saying. This fight really is about, you've got two guys in the ring, right? Not these two. These two were genuine world class. Well, Eubank did fight his fair share of tomato cans, let's be honest, right? But these two were genuine world level. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, Chris Eubank, yeah? Even though Chris Eubank Jr. was the tomato can killer, yeah? Like, Chris Eubank Jr. had a great jab, in my opinion. Chris Eubank Jr. had a seasoned jab, seasoned jab, and he was technically light years. Eubank Sr. was technically light years ahead of the pair of these. I mean, look, you could take these two boxing skills, add them together, and it still wouldn't surpass what Chris Eubank Jr. knew how to throw a jab. Chris Eubank Jr. had a hell of a chin. Oh, yeah, senior, not junior. So I'm already getting mixed up. You get my picture. But these two were genuine class. Nigel Benn went toe-to-toe with a prime McLennan. Say no more. And did what he had to do. So we know what Nigel Benn is. And these two were genuine world class. This guy was a world-class puncher. This guy wasn't out there, punching out part-time chefs. Nigel Benn. You know what I mean? This guy was out ending Hall of Fame careers. Gerald McLennan. This guy was out ending Hall of Fame careers. We weren't putting in this. This guy wasn't stepping in the ring and fighting Ronald McDonald for 6 chicken nuggets and a McFlurry. So don't get it twisted, like it ain't this fight. This fight ain't gonna be nothing like this fight. This fight is the battle of whoever's got the worst fundamentals out of these two will lose. That's what I think. Both of them lack fundamentals. Eubanks got no jab. He's not particularly good at lateral movement. What's Eubanks' weakness in fights? A good jab, innit? Press 1 if you agree, press 2 if you disagree. Every time Chris Eubank Jr. has gone up against a decent jab in any fight, he has struggled. Marcus Morrison, he struggled. George Groves, one of the best jabbers in boxing, and George Groves just took him apart in that fight. Dominated him in that fight. 118, 112, dominated him all the way. Anytime Eubank comes up against someone with a jab and he can't just walk into the pocket for free and unload his combinations, and he's actually got a sort of... He can't just walk into the pocket. He can't just walk into the pocket in a straight line because he's got to get past the jab. So now he's got to move his head. Now he's got to feint, draw the jab, and counter punch. He's in trouble, isn't it? Anytime. What was his first loss? Billy Joe Saunders jabbed his head off for the first 7 rounds, and then it was what it was, isn't it? Billy Joe jabbed his head off for 7 rounds, and then it was what it was. George Groves jabbed his head off for 7 rounds. Korobov was well on the way to winning that fight before his shoulder fell out. So Eubank lacks fundamentals, in my opinion. We've shown some of the stuff he does on count. We've actually reviewed Chris Eubank Jr. on tape, and we've shown things like Chris Eubank Jr. will throw a right hand and his left hand's by his waist. No, I'm not trying to disrespect or say I'm better than these guys, but you know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to make it clear here. Neither of these guys are the finished article. Neither of these guys are the finished article at all. So it's going to come down, and both of them have got weaknesses. Eubank struggles to be the big man because he struggles to stick behind the jab. And I'm not sure if he has the skill set to keep Conor Benn at the end of the jab. If he can do that, he'll win this fight, because you know what Conor Benn is. All Conor Benn knows how to do is rush into the pocket and unload bombs. If Eubank shows Conor Benn a little bit of distance, Conor Benn, from what I've seen so far, hasn't shown himself to be that kind of guy that can stand in front of a guy, feint him, draw his jab, come under, throw a shot, slip, throw a shot. Fighting a bigger guy is hard. So that's all I'm saying. I hope I'm not boring people. I'm sorry. But I did want to talk a little bit about the matchup, yeah, instead of just talking about fucking resumes and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, as we always say, when you're discussing who's going to win a fight, resumes don't win fights. Boxers do. Daryl says, Ben is over 5 kg lighter. Eubank has damaged bigger men like Blackwell. Toe-to-toe, I believe Eubank chin is good enough. Ben's going to be on the back foot the whole night. Well, let me tell you something right now. If Conor Benn's on the back foot against Eubank, that fight's over. Again, like I said before, this is what I always say, yeah? One of the biggest mistakes that casuals make is guys like Conor Benn get in the ring with opponents, yeah, like Chef Algieri, yeah, and Van der Heerden, right? They get in the ring with overmatched opponents and they blast them and they get them out of there, right? And then guys like me will come along and say stuff like, well, that's good. You know, you give him credit for getting the guy out of there, but actually, what did he really learn from that? Because we keep hearing it's a learning fight. It's a learning fight. And I always say, what is he learning? Do you remember that? We used to have these conversations. Or it's a learning fight. Because you know a lot of these fans, innit? They just regurgitate stuff they hear on IFL TV, innit? So they hear a couple of promoters say it on IFL TV, and all of a sudden now they always say learning fight. And we always say, well, what are they learning? What are you learning? By going in and swinging for the hills against Chris Van der Heerden and getting him out of there in 2 rounds. And there's the answer, isn't it? You ever seen Conor, and I understand Conor Benn's a destroyer, but have we ever seen from Conor Benn in a fight any sort of competency on the back foot? Conor Benn on the back foot having to feint, make a guy miss, make a guy pay, make a guy counterpunch. Have we ever seen that? I'm not sure, you know. And again, that's why, Daryl, if he does get backed up, he's going to be in massive trouble if he gets backed up. Because so far in the fights that I've seen, he's only been fighting one way, forward and loading up without a jab, without feints. So you put a guy like Conor Benn on the back foot, and if Eubank can do that, you're going to be in big trouble in that fight. But I think Conor Benn's got a genuine chance because Chris Eubank Jr. has no jab. So we'll have to wait and see. So what do you guys think then? I'll read your comments. I've been rambling on for 42 minutes, and I apologise for that. 150 people in the chat, only 43 likes, absolutely disgraceful. If you'd like to join the chat and give your opinion, please feel free to subscribe. Hit the like button. I like to think I've given you a little bit more than the usual resume bullshit, to be fair. Regardless of what you think about me, we talked about the actual matchup, a little bit about the boxing. You notice I don't go on box and go, but look at who Eubank fought and then look at who Ben fought. It's a resume. We're going to talk about who's going to win, but make no mistake, both of these two lack fundamentals. Both of these two lack serious fundamentals. And that's why you should actually learn during learning fights. And one of these two is about to find that out. Yeah? One of these two, if these two step into the ring next, one of these two is going to find out. Learning fights should actually be learning fights. Don't jump in the ring against overmatched fighters, blow them out of there, and then say you're learning when you're not learning. Because if you're not learning and you jump into a fight like this, you will get found out. Daryl says, Ben is a walk into range and trade up merchant. His style is tailor-made for Eubank. Who have you guys got winning the fight? I think if you've got Eubank winning this fight, press 3. If you've got Conor Benn winning this fight, press 7. Do you remember when Kell Brook fought Golovkin? And they said, it's not the end of the world for Kell because he's still the welterweight champion. Do you remember that? I wonder if they're going to say the same thing about Conor Benn here, if this fight happens. I wonder if they're going to say, it's not the end of the world for Conor because he can just go back down to welterweight. Funny thing is, it really could be the end of the world for him. That's the problem. Do you remember that? It's not the end of the world for Kell. He'll just go down to welterweight. Well, Kell pretty much career was ended that day. Pretty much the end of Kell's career. Now, obviously, Eubank ain't no fucking Golovkin. Golovkin has one of the best jabs in boxing. So Golovkin's completely different kettle of fish. Golovkin knows how to be the big man. He's got one of the best jabs in boxing. Period. Till this day, his jab is outstanding. So he knows, he knows. A guy like him would know. Stiff jab, get the guy moving backwards, knock him off balance, full momentum, combinations off. He knows how to be a big man. His jab is outstanding. His jab alone will take you off balance, get you on the back foot. He'll come forward, take the space, cut the ring off, and let his hands do the rest. And Chris Eubank Jr. don't know how to do that, in my opinion. I'll read your comments. Get your comments and I'll read all your comments. All you got to do is, if you subscribe, you get to comment on the show. LD Phoenix says, terrible matchup. Typical Hearn putting his fighters in dangerous, career-threatening life or death fights. Do you know what? I don't think this fight is as dangerous as like Eubank and Golovkin. And that's why I spent so much time talking about the fact that both of these lack fundamentals. Do you know what I mean? Like, Brook and Golovkin were world level. Brook went over to the States and beat Porter. He was a genuine puncher. Golovkin was the most feared man in boxing. Like, both of them, that's the only point I'm trying to make. When we got, like, Eubank and Ben the first time, both of these is world class. Both of these guys were world class. Golovkin and Brook were world class. These two, in my opinion, there's big debates. Let me ask you, who do you think's more world-class out of these two? Conor Benn or Chris Eubank? Who do you think's more world-class? I'll be honest with you. I have to say it's Eubank because Eubank's been in a ring with a guy who was the WBA champion and the legit WBA champion. Not the interim or nothing. Like, George Groves was a legit champion. Fought DeGale, fought Badu Jack, who was probably the best in the division around about that time. Fought Callum Smith, got blasted out of there. What do you think? Who do you think is closer to world class? Conor Benn or Chris Eubank? I'd say Eubank Jr. is the closer to world class out of these two. And that's a good point about Eubank, though. And somebody said, look what happened to Blackwell against Eubank. You don't need to be world class to put someone in a coma. Boxing's, but the funny thing is, can I just say this? I get criticised a lot for saying how dangerous of a sport boxing is. I get criticised a lot for questioning these on both sides. I'm not unbiased. Everybody knows I've got my favourites. I don't come on here and pretend I'm unbiased. But you know what I mean? Oh, guys, please super chat me. I'm unbiased. Listen, I don't do any of that stuff. That's nonsense. We've all got our biases, innit? We've all got our favourites. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I never come on here and pretend that I'm unbiased and please super chat me because, you know, fuck all that stuff. Just give you my opinion, but boxing's a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous sport. Chris Eubank Jr. nearly killed somebody in the fucking ring. And you know the funny thing is, how a lot of the time, do you remember when Chris Eubank Jr. was on those fights? Was on those Channel 5 fights, fighting in shopping centres under Mick Hennessy. And we used to laugh at Eubank and say he's got no power. Do you remember that? Do you remember that? When Eubank Jr. used to be in the ring with all those tomato cans down in, what was it? Blue Water Shopping Centre. Was he fighting on Mick Hennessy cards in shopping centres? And we used to say Eubank's got no power. And despite that, he nearly killed a man in the fucking ring. And that's why I do say to people, no disrespect. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, but that's the reason why I do say to people that it does help if you have a spar and get lit up before you start talking. You know, it does help. Because when you start coming home with headaches because you've been lit up and you come home with bruises from sparring bums in 16-ounce gloves, can you imagine what these blokes come home like after getting in the ring? 10-ounce gloves, 10-ounce gloves, smashing each other to pieces. Jesus Christ, Lord knows what goes on. So, dangerous sport. You know, the more I think about this fight, I'm starting to think, is this fight really going to happen? Because, again, if you're Eddie Hearn, how do you go? If you think Conor Benn's a protected fighter, press 5. I'm not saying Conor Benn's ducking anybody. Listen to what I'm saying. If you think Conor Benn is protected by his promoters and his handlers, press 5. I believe he's one of the most protected fighters in the UK. That's my honest opinion. Notice what I'm saying. I'm not saying he won't fight. He'll fight anyone. I'm saying he's a protected. I would say the same about Gervonta Davis is a protected fighter, but he'll fight anyone. How do you go from protecting somebody from the likes of David Avanesian, but then you're going to seriously consider sticking him in with fucking Eubank at 155? Kell Brook didn't even want to fight Chris Eubank at a catchweight because he just thought, what the fuck? What's the point? Kell Brook. Let me check this poll. How are you guys seeing it in a minute? 135 votes. You guys are still saying yes. You guys still think this fight's going to happen. Guys, get your comments in on what I've said so far, and I'll read them all out. Get all your comments in. I'm tempted to do call-ins, on this. I'm tempted to. But every time we do call-ins, we get Muppets who have to ruin it. This is what I'm saying. But it is what it is. We always get Muppets who have to ruin it. We've had a pretty decent conversation so far. If you're enjoying the show and you'd like the show, please show you enjoy the show by hitting the like button. We've got 170 people in here right now and about 55 likes. So it is what it is. All right, I think we're going to get Daryl coming in a minute. So Daryl's going to be our guy. So if you just give me a sec, if you get your comments in, I will. I'll do this. Bear with me. So what I'm going to do quickly is email this link to Daryl. Just bear with me. I'm going to get my headphones ready. Does anybody else think they want to call in and give their opinion? If you do, we're going to do some call-ins. Give your opinion. I'm interested in the fight. I'm giving credit all around. I'm giving credit to Eddie Hearn because it's a good fight. I'm giving credit to Conor Benn because he'll fight anybody. But at the same time, I'm taking credit away from Eddie Hearn because he said the guy's a fucking, a world level welterweight. Well, he should be fighting people his own class, his own weight class at world level, in my opinion. Conor says, do you think it's because he knows he won't beat any of the top 147 guys, so he's cashing him out while he can? Can I be completely honest with you? If this fight really is close to happening, I mean, Chris McKenna is normally solid as a rock. Just letting you guys know, this isn't some bum. Like, Chris McKenna's normally pretty solid. I don't know what you guys think about Chris McKenna, but Chris McKenna's got a reputation for being a pretty solid journalist, He's not some bum who makes up shit for no reason. So if he's saying that this fight is close, there's a very, very good chance this fight is close. I just don't know why they would do this fight for Conor Benn. But it makes sense, doesn't it, though, Conor, to be honest? Is this Conor Benn talking? It's probably Conor Benn. But we've got Conor Benn on the show. Conor Benn's asking, do you think it's because Eddie knows I won't beat any of the top guys at 147, so he's cashing me out? Yes, Conor, that's probably got something to do with it. Do you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if it's something to do with I could be completely wrong. If this fight happens next, breaking news. Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius, according to Frank Warren, in October. So there you go. The return of Wilder in October, according to Frank Warren. So if anybody's interested in that. If this fight really does happen next, I hope somebody asks him about why now and if this has got anything to do with... Is there any pressure to get these subs in? What do you guys think? I mean, the press conference, I'm just waiting for Daryl to come on. The press conferences will be very, very entertaining. Obviously, you're going to get Eubank. Eubank Sr. has been vicariously living through his son since the beginning of his career, hasn't he? So that's going to be very, very interesting, isn't it? Because you've got Eubank Sr. just, doesn't know how to stay in the limelight. So you're going to have Eubank Sr. on TV 24/7. Making it about him. Right, Daz is here. Right, let me just sort this out so I don't have any echo. Hold on a minute. All right, Daz?
How you doing, man? Good to see you from you again, bro.
Yeah, not too bad. All right, I'm going to mute myself, Daz, because there's a bit of echo here. So I'm going to sort out my microphone and my headset. Just touch on a few things. Do you think this fight will happen? And just start off with, do you think this fight will really happen next? And if it does, Daz, why now?
I think it will happen. I think it's mainly because they want to keep Conor Benn in fights where the public don't lose interest. So obviously up until now, Ben's fought guys who are either overmatched, so he's a much higher quality than them, or that are faded, right? So I think they know that he's not ready for Jaron Ennis or any of those top level guys in his weight class, and he can't beat Crawford or any of the guys who are belt holders. So they're thinking about who can they match him up against where he won't get hurt, and if he does lose the fight, then they've got built-in excuses around why that was. So if they match him against Eubank, they can if he loses, they can say, well, Eubank was just naturally too big, but they wanted to make the fight for legacy, the father's name, so on and so on and so forth. And obviously, it makes a lot of money because the British public, especially people over the age of 45, right, they all remember the dads fighting back in the day. So they want to cash out on that market before that opportunity goes. And if he does win, then obviously he can move on and fight the guys who probably if he wins, they'll probably give him a step down afterwards as a he's had a hard fight. Let's give him a bit of a softer touch, and then that'll probably be 12, 18 months down the road, and then it can reassess and see who the belt holders are at that time and see if we can challenge them. So I think it's another one where they're trying to be quite shrewd with the matchmaking, but I think it's a gamble on his health because Eubank is very dangerous, and Conor Benn's style is come forward and trade up and throw big left hooks, right, and just loads up and everything. So I feel like that brings the fight straight into Eubank's advantage because he wants a guy that's going to come and stand toe to toe with him, so he can unload himself. At least that was his old style. In Eubank's last fight, we've seen him moving around a lot and trying to give angles. He looked a little bit stiff, but I think that if the Eubank of old will be way too big, I think Eubank was fighting at 168, but he probably weighed in about 167-ish off the top of my head, or 168 on the limit. He's not a big guy. So if he's 168 and Ben is 5-7 kilos lighter, then he's a naturally bigger man. I think the height difference, off the top of my head, Eubank is 5'10", 5'11". I think he's 5'11 and a half actually. And I think Conor Benn's 5'7". So he's given up a lot in reach, height and weight. I don't see where his advantages are, to be honest.
You said in the comment section, some of this stuff, I think you said some of this stuff might rings close to Golovkin and Brook because of, if this fight happens, because of you've got a guy who's an up-and-coming matchroom star, but they're having difficulty making fights for him. So what they do is they send him into one of these dare-to-be-great fights with the hope that if he does get beat, he won't get beat too badly, and then they can match him back at his own weight class at a future date. What do you think about that? Do you think there are similarities there between the Brook and Golovkin situation? And would you consider this bad matchmaking, or would you consider it not bad matchmaking? Because at the end of the day, it is Chris Eubank Jr. But then again, Chris Eubank Jr. has put people in comas. I don't know, Daryl. Give us your thoughts on that.
It's carefree matchmaking, but see, what I've noticed about matching is when it's a situation where they're not sure which route to take with their fighter, like let's say all the routes are blocked up because the guys that hold the title are too good, they always default to whatever makes the most money. Rather than be patient and think, let's just give a guy some learning fights and wait it out for 12 months, let him get some experience, maybe fight 2 or 3 guys who are maybe just slightly below his level or in and around his own level, but are not going to progress him through the rankings. They always jump into, okay, which one makes the most money? Let's just go for that one. And that is what I think got Kell Brook into the situation that he was in, jumping just for the money and then obviously getting hurt. And I just see similarities with this situation because obviously Eubank's got a great engine. He's fit and strong. So, and Ben's qualities are that he's fit and strong and athletic, but Eubank's just good at the same things, but he's bigger. So when you've got 2 guys who are athletic and strong, naturally bigger man is going to have the advantage. They're both fundamentally flawed, as you rightly called out. Neither of them have good jabs. I think they're just going to meet each other in the center of the ring and just slug it out. I see it being a Eubank stoppage between 6 and 9.
Really? Can I ask you as well? Another thing I thought I'd bring up is these learning fights, which I've been very, very critical of, right? I think British boxing's a fucking joke. They're learning fights. Conor Benn, yeah? We've seen him hurt against French kickboxer Cedric Peyronod, yeah? And we know he didn't jack it in, he stayed in there. So I'm not questioning Conor Benn's heart for a second, right? But when you fight in the way that Conor Benn fights, from what we've seen in his recent fights, right? Come in, jazzed up from the first round, throwing bombs from the first round. He doesn't, to me, I don't know what you think, Daryl, certain the last couple of Conor Benn fights I've seen, hasn't really shown an ability to settle into a fight, actually. He looks like the crowd hype him, the crowd get him going, and it looks like he's fighting on instinct and emotion very, very early on in his fights. Doesn't settle down behind the jab, doesn't seem to want to have a look and take a look what's on offer. Seems to want to look and get stuck in straight away. And you put a guy in like that with a guy who's flawed in Chris Eubank Jr., who's very flawed, but a guy who is very spiteful and a guy who can hurt people, like he hurt Nick Blackwell, like he's hurt other fighters as well. He can hurt people, right? And you look at Conor Benn, and you look at the fights he's been given. What I'm trying to make, Darren, is when a guy like Conor Benn gets hurt, right? When a guy like Conor Benn's no longer on the front foot, he's not going to be in the ring with no more Algerians, no more chefs, no more Ronald McDonald's. We're not fighting for McFlurries and chicken nuggets no more. Now we're now in the ring with a genuinely big guy. And he gets hurt. Like Eubank lands one on him, or he hurts him, or he gets in trouble. Do you think Conor Benn's genuinely going to know how to survive? Because this is why I talk about fundamentals of boxing, Darryl. So you know, Darryl, for those of you who don't know, Darryl's had fights galore. So Darryl knows about fight. I don't. Darryl's had fights. You know, Darryl, when you've really been in the trenches, or you've really learned, you've really concentrated on boxing on the back foot, you've really concentrated on, do you know what I mean, making guys miss and making guys. I haven't seen Conor Benn do any of that, and I'm concerned that if Eubank hurts him, he's going to be like a fish out of water. Because again, I'm not sure if he has those defensive fundamentals in him where he can survive, or he can hold a guy. He knows how to hold on. He knows how to slip and move. He knows how to get behind his jab. He knows how to feint and play for time. I don't think Conor Benn has any of that, Darryl. Sorry for rambling on. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the thing with Ben is that I think defensively he's improved in his last. I think over the last two fights, I probably noticed it, but that is when he's fresh and when he's not under pressure and the guy that he's fighting is not on the same level. So it's easier to slip and slide when you can see the shots coming, or you know that you're better than the other guy, or you're not worried about him catching you anyway because he doesn't carry much power. But I think it's entirely different when you know that if you're slipping and sliding, you get something wrong and the guy tagged you, it could be game over. So we haven't seen him in pressure situations with a high level of defense. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of unknowns and question marks around Ben in that respect. But what we do know about Eubank is that he's taken big shots from, George Groves. He's taken, George Groves one of the bigger punchers of the division over probably the last 5 years, and he took a lot of his shots, and he never really looked like he was in any danger of getting stopped against Groves. So I think that Groves hits harder than Ben, most likely. Eubank spars against light heavyweights, and I think he's even sparred against. Some heavyweights before. Who's that? The Brighton, but Scott Welcher's son. I think he's done rounds with Scott Welcher's son. So he can hold a shot. He hasn't really got to worry too much about what's coming back. I think his probably the keys for Ben to him will probably be doing more of what he hasn't done so far, which is boxing to orders and boxing behind the jab, because I think his jab is better than Eubanks, but I just don't know if that's going to be enough to keep a man with that kind of engine off for 12 rounds. It's going to be hard. At some point, it's going to come toe to toe, and it depends on what happens in those moments.
Let me ask you a completely different question, right? I think I'm probably a little bit older than you, but we might be around the same age.
I'm 32.
Huh?
I'm 32. Yeah.
32. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I'm slightly older than you, slightly. Cough, cough. Yeah. Let me tell you something. Eubank and Ben, the original fight. Do you think that this this Ben versus Eubank 3 fight, will really recapture the public's imagination? That's something we haven't talked about, right? Like the promoters are taking a bit of a gamble, like Hearn, DAZN, and the rest of these guys. They're taking a bit of a gamble on this fight, aren't they? Because they really think that this is going to get the public's imagination like Ben versus Eubank did. I'm not sure. I'm not saying it's not going to be a big fight. I'm not sure. I'm not saying it's not going to do well. But I don't know, Darryl. There's a couple of things for me. Ben versus Eubank was a long time ago. Most of the people today that you see on Twitter talking about boxing started watching boxing around Froch versus Groves too. So they don't even really know who Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn were. Then you've got the fact that this won't be shown on terrestrial TV, right? And this won't be being promoted on terrestrial TV. This will be shown on an app, right? Mm-hmm. Do you really think that this fight is going to capture the imagination of the public, yeah, and make these two sort of household names in the way that the promoters or the people gambling on this fight might think it does?
Honestly, no. I think it's more of like a fight for older generations to reminisce on, the people the people that remember the dad. So what would that be? Late 30s upwards. It's more a fight for that demographic, that market, which is fine, but it's not really a fight to where it's not really a fight that goes anywhere. Okay, so let's say they fight once. If it's close enough to a rematch, okay, great, whatever. If it's a blowout, there'll be a one and done. Where does it take the sport? Where does it take both of the fighters after that? It doesn't really lead anywhere. It's just like a cash grab, really. It doesn't. It's very odd. I don't. Well, I do understand why they're making it, but it's not really progressing the sport and pushing it forward and building anything.
I kind of find it a bit funny, isn't it? Because we're supposed to be sort of like pushing the sport forward, like you said, right, and entering in a whole new sort of era of talent, aren't we? We're coming out of the sort of the Amir Khan, that sort of that Amir Khan era. We've just come out Amir Khan, Kell Brook. That whole era is retiring, right? And we're supposed to be now moving on to the future. But it's a good point you raised there. Are we really moving into the future, or are we just sort of rubbing our dicks and reminiscing about, two guys who are now in their fucking 60s and the way they fought each other fucking at Old Trafford 20 years ago when they were both world level? Do you know what I mean? It is a bit of a paradox there, Daryl. I mean, what do you think? I think the one good thing about this fight will be the build-up. I mean, the build-up will be electric, right? You'd imagine Chris Eubank Sr. will be absolutely front and centre, yeah? They'll give him free reign, you would think, right? To try and sell this as much as possible.
Yeah, I can see it being the build-up being really entertaining. Like both of the dads being there, arguing like old times. The sons getting involved, maybe even the trainer. It could be entertaining. Do you know what I mean? It could be fun. But yeah, there'll be loads of sound bites out of it, and I'm sure like we won't be able to keep all the YouTube interviews off our screens for months on end. But no, it'll be entertaining while it lasts. That's for sure.
All right, Daryl, I'm going to pop off in a couple of minutes. So give your final thoughts, Daryl, on this fight. Who you think wins again? Just make any sort of key points. Give your sort of final thoughts on the fight, and also throw in, Daryl, who would you have had Conor Benn fight instead of this fight as well? Throw that in by all means.
Yeah, that's a good question. Who would he have fought instead? I think Conor Benn versus a British level guy. So Eckerman, I think I pronounced that correctly, or somebody like a Chris Congo, someone like a Michael McKinson, someone that would test him, but on paper should be in and around his level, where it's a 50-50 fight. Do you know what I mean? So something where you could. Go on, Ultra. You go.
No, sorry. McKinson's a great name. Carry on. Like McKinson, even if McKinson doesn't get splattered by Ortiz, it's a good name. Why not? Go carry on, Daryl.
Yeah, it's evenly matched on paper. It looks good, around the same weight, same physical attributes, like around height and so on and so forth. Both young guys, so you can't say one's over the hill and one isn't. It's a fair fight on paper, and I think you can get behind that. And he would learn from it either way, whichever way it went. You learn from it, and you can build from there. So I think the fight that would have been fine. Yeah, I don't really think that him fighting against a guy who's this much bigger than him, I don't see how that is going to benefit his career long term. He's still young, right? Is he even 25? He's 25, 26. How old is Conor Benn?
I don't even know, mate, but I'll take your word for it. Absolutely.
Let's say he's mid-20s for argument's sake. He might have another 10 years in this sport, but if Eubank Jr. gets hold of him, he's not going to have 10 years, that's for sure, because Eubank's devastating buncher. Especially when it comes to the like volume shots, we've seen him ice the Avni Yildirim with one shot. We've seen him what he did to Blackwell. He's hurt many fighters before, so it wouldn't be surprised to happen again. That's a much smaller man.
He arguably did Yildirim better than Canelo. Am I right in that? He did. Yeah, he arguably did Yildirim better than Canelo did.
He did, mate, and in his hometown with loads of Turkish fans baying for his blood. And he was standing in the middle of the ring afterwards, just staring them all down. And he left the ring with them all cheering. So he's got a set of balls on him, that's for sure.
All right, Daz, thanks for joining us, man. Please come back on next time. It's always a pleasure having you on, mate.
Cheers, mate. Take care. Bye.
Appreciate it. Daryl's going to be getting his own slot soon. We just have to find a way to work it out. All right. So Daryl on the channel will be a more long-term thing. He's got a lot of knowledge about the sport because he's a guy who's had fights. So he knows a lot about getting in the ring, training, genuinely training to fight. Not what I do, training like a muppet to have a couple of spars here or there. Training to fight, training to win, making weight, the mental side of it. Daryl knows a lot about that kind of thing. So we're working on getting Daryl a proper slot at some point. I just need to get my shit in order. I've also got Mickey Helliott who wants to come. Mickey Helliott would love to talk about this fight. Mickey Helliott's been asking to come back on, actually. So we will be getting Mickey Helliott back on shortly. So I will give you some of my thoughts, and then we'll call it a day. And then we'll go for a quick bit of news, all right? This fight as a whole, the more I think about it, let me go for your final poll. Let's end the poll now. I'll tell you what, if you want to vote on this poll, you've got 20 seconds left to vote on this poll right now. It's balanced, man. It's been nearly 200 votes. Will Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. really happen? You've got 20 seconds left on that poll. It's 52-48 to yes. Do you know what? Be honest with you, yeah? The more and more I think about this fight, and the more and more I think about the whys and the whats, it doesn't make any fucking sense from a Conor Benn perspective. Hey, press 8 if you agree with me there. That this fight doesn't make any fucking sense from a Conor Benn perspective. Like, can somebody tell me genuinely, or maybe there's something I'm missing out, what sense does it make for Conor Benn? Because he ain't the favourite in this fight. He's not the favourite. If Daryl's right about the heights, that's terrible, by the way. If Daryl's right, I don't really follow the tail of the tape too much, but Eubanks 5'11" and Conor Benn's 5'7". Jesus Christ. And you know, remember when we had the fucking conversation about Dillian White? Do you remember? And it was, but Ultra Tech, but Ultra, Dillian's got this magical left hook, Ultra, and but Ultra, it's not about boxing. Boxing's got nothing to do with punching. Boxing's all about resume. Whoever's fought the best opponents always wins. It's all about resume and mind games. And I just said, hold on a minute. Do you know that Dillian White's 6'4" and Tyson Fury's 6'9"? And there's a massive reach advantage. Okay. Has Dillian White ever shown you the footwork and balance that's going to be required to close distance very quickly against the bigger man without getting hit and hurt in a fight? He hasn't even shown that against guys practically his own size like Povetkin. He's never shown you really that he has the footwork and the ability to close distance, moving quickly, get in and out without being hit and hurt badly in fights. He's never shown that. So why would he show that against someone who's fucking 6'9", 270 pounds, massive reach advantage, ambidextrous, and also probably one of the most skilled fighters in all of boxing? Why would he show it in that fight? It doesn't make any sense, right? But Ultra Tech, Ultra, better man, right? And I'm getting the same vibes about this fight with Conor Benn, innit? 5'7" versus 5'11". Conor Benn's not much of a jabber. Big question marks, in my opinion, over fundamentals. Big question marks over the way he sets up shots. You know, hasn't really been in deep against anybody as well. Hasn't really been in deep with anybody. Was in deep with Cedric Paynout a couple of years ago. That's it. You know, hasn't really been in deep with anybody. Now you're going to chuck him into the deep end with Chris Eubank Jr. Just doesn't make any sense to me. If you're Conor Benn, other than I'm fighting for my dad's legacy, innit? Isn't it? Doesn't really mean anything, does it? Other than I'm fighting him because I want to get a win back for my dad. Is that what this is about? Do you guys think this is what this is really about? I wonder what Nigel's saying to him about it. Do you think? You know, Nigel always wanted that win back over Eubank. Do you remember when they had that thing at Gladiator? Who remembers that? Real boxing heads will know what I'm talking about. Do you remember Ben and Eubank Gladiator, where they couldn't have an actual third fight, yeah? So them two went and did some fucking next Gladiator BS. Do you remember? I'm trying to show you now. Well, they did that Gladiator competition where they trained as gladiators and then they sort of had this sort of mock fight. Here we go, Gladiator Ben versus Eubank. Do you remember this? And do you remember how seriously Ben was taking it? Because for Ben, it meant everything. Because he lost the first time fair and square against Eubank. But I think most of us know, innit? The second time around, innit? Ben was kind of robbed, wasn't he? Press 1 if you think Nigel Benn was robbed the second time around against Chris Eubank Jr. I thought Nigel Benn clearly won that fight against Chris Eubank the first time. Yeah? And remember how Ben went into Gladiator? And you see how much it meant to Ben just to get that win back. And Ben's always been chasing that third win over Eubank, innit? Remember, even as late as a couple of years ago. Do you remember they were still trying to Ben was still trying to talk him into fighting for the third fight? Remember that 5-6 years ago, Nigel Benn said, "I've returned to full-time training," and he wants to try and put that right. So Nigel Benn's been trying to put an L on Chris Eubank for years, and rightly so, because that second fight, in my opinion, Chris Eubank never won that second fight. But that's my opinion. LD Phoenix disagrees, right? So I wonder what's being said in the Ben household, where his father should be saying, "Look, mate, you know, your promoter's saying that you're a world-class welterweight. How about you fight somebody in your own fucking weight class, right?" Where, in my opinion, he should be saying that. I wonder if Nigel's telling him, "Nah, go on, you'll beat him. Nah, go and do it." Because Nigel needs to see Ben W, Eubank L, by hook or by crook. That's what Nigel needs to see. Ben W, Eubank L. Nigel Benn's been alive nearly 60 years. He ain't never seen Ben W, Eubank L. And maybe his son has a chance of doing it. So what's going on? Is he vicariously living through his son? It's bizarre, isn't it? Surely not. It's bizarre, isn't it? The whole thing's bizarre. You'd think his father would talk him out and say, "Look, that fight's a cash-out fight. Ben versus Eubank, that's a cash-out fight." Or do what Floyd Mayweather does. Do what Floyd Mayweather does. Do it as an exhibition and go and fight in Japan, or go and fight on top of some fucking Saudi rooftop. You know what goes on? Goes on. 1 minute they're throwing people off rooftops. Next minute they're having fucking $1 billion boxing exhibitions down there. You're going to do the fight. Do the fight as some kind of big exhibition in Saudi Arabia when your career's over. But right now, you're supposed to be in your prime of your career. Why are you fighting Eubank Jr. at fucking catch weight of 155? One more thing I will say. The weight thing. Do you think people pay a little bit too much attention to the weight? Do you remember we had this bullshit with Ben and Eubank? People obsessed with catch weights and shit. Oh my God, he's draining him. Do you reckon we might hear some of this? Oh, Eubank's going to be drained to shit. Oh, maybe Eubank will miss weight deliberately and pay a fine. Do you remember we had all this bullshit for Brooke and Khan? And everybody was yapping on about the fucking weight. And I said, to my credit, I did say, I don't care if Kell Brook comes in on weight or off weight. Kell Brook's going to knock Amir Khan out because he's the better fighter. I don't care who's got better resume. I don't care who Amir Khan's fought. I don't care how many world titles he's faced. I don't care how many times he's fought in America. I don't care if he's the bigger name. I don't care about any of that. I don't care if Kell Brook's trained. I don't care any about that. Kell Brook's going to come in that ring. He's going to knock him out because he punches too hard for someone like Amir Khan. But it always was a bad style matchup for Khan, innit? Regardless of the weight. Whether Kell Brook was 154, 155, 156, if Kell Brook was fucking 160 in a bag of fucking pork scratchings, it wouldn't matter. The outcome would be the same. Khan on the floor or Khan getting waved off because he punches too hard. He punches too hard with either hand. He's got too good a jab. His timing is outrageous. His timing of a punch is outrageous. What's been Amir Khan's kryptonite? Getting timed in the middle of punching. That's how he's been knocked out badly in a lot of his knockout losses. What's Kell Brook's best attribute? It's timing. Bigger man, stronger man, punch with either hand, orthodox to southpaw. Forget about weights. I wonder if a few people are getting suckered into the weight a little bit too much. They're gambling and thinking, oh, but if Eubank's 155, maybe Ben's got a chance. But I'll tell you what's going to happen now. Let me put it this way, I wouldn't gamble on that. It might happen. Maybe Eubank might get drained. But if somebody's putting their life savings on an athlete like Chris Eubank Jr., draining himself at 155 so badly that Conor Benn's going to put a beating on him. If somebody's putting a gamble on that, let me tell you, you might want to go to Gamblers Anonymous. Right, final comments, get them in. I appreciate you being here today. Final comments. I don't think Ben like that. He seems more humble than Eubank. He does. Listen, you know, if it was the roles were reversed and it was the Eubanks who needed the win off the Bens, you know Chris Eubank Sr. is telling his son to get in there. Straight up. Chris Eubank Jr. doesn't give a fuck. That dude is straight up delusional. You know if the roles were reversed, yeah, and Conor Benn was a heavyweight, yeah, and Chris Eubank Jr. was a featherweight, you better believe in any kind of negotiations for this fight, Chris Eubank's telling him, yeah? Chris Eubank Jr. is telling him, don't come home tonight until you sign that contract. Chris Eubank Sr. will be outside the front door, knocking on the door, trying to get in. Dad, let me in. And Eubank Sr. will be looking through the window with his monocle on, going, "Have you signed it yet? If you signed it, once you sign it, I'll let you in." "But Dad, he outweighs me by like 50 kilos. "Don't care. You're going in. The Warriors code. You're going in. I don't care about the 50-pound difference. It's all about the Warriors code. You're going in." "I'm going to bed. Send me a text when you're done. Send me a text when you sign the contract." Listen, if it was the other way around, this fight would have been done by now. Because you know what Chris Eubank Sr. is like? He's sending him in, man. He lives for his son. He's sending him in. And once his son signed the contract, even though he's not fighting, Eubank Sr. will be sitting at home, shadow boxing in front of the mirror with his monocle on. You know, he'll be doing all this crazy shit, Eubank Sr. You know that, yeah? Innit? With his sheriff, with his sheriff's badge on. You know Eubank Sr., if this fight gets announced, is going to be shadow boxing in the mirror. But like, "Dad, why are you shadow boxing? You're not fighting." "It's the Warriors code, son. It's the Warriors code. It's all about the Warriors code." The Warriors code, boy. Father and son combinations. There'd be some strange shit going on in boxing. They tell me that British boxing's still alive. And let me finish up with this. British boxing's still alive. How come we're having to go back to fights that happened 30 years ago to fucking bring back the glory days? Tell me that. If British boxing's booming so much. If British boxing's booming so much here, why are we calling on the fucking spirits of two elderly West Indian men? That's what we're doing, innit? And I'm from the West Indies, so I can say that, yeah? But we're calling on the spirits of two old West Indian men to revive British boxing. What's going on, innit? I thought British boxing was booming, innit? What are we doing? Ultra Tech, British boxing is booming. You're just a hater. Well, hold on a minute. Then how come we're calling on senior citizens from Barbados and Jamaica to get British boxing out of shit? Well, how's that fair? How's that fair, innit? "60-year-old Barbadians carrying the sport of British boxing." That's where we're at right now, you know. 60-year-old Barbadians and Jamaicans carrying the sport of boxing. Can we relive the glory days one more time before the whole thing goes to shit? Peace out. Oh, and hit the like. Here. I'll even give you a bumper clarity before I go.
Bomba Clatter!